KARABALI to come to the podium, which is a risk regulation and reporting expert and results-driven specialist with an overall 35 plus years of experience, having served in top managerial position, and her expertise in sustainable development advisory services include regulatory framework, risk management, ESG index methodology, disclosures according to EU SFDR, and climate risk reporting. And her topic, we're going to get us back to our childhood, trying to connect the dots about the double materiality necessity, which is from SDGs to enterprise level sustainability and ESG. Thank you. Yes.
Good evening to you all. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for the honor. It's a privilege to address my presentation today to you. I feel like I'm a fish out of my bowl because I'm not an architect and I'm not an engineer. I'm something different. So, I would like to welcome you to the audit and regulation and reporting aspects of sustainability. And let me introduce you, I will introduce you to the relevant terminology. So, let us start. So, on July 31st, the European Commission adopted a delegated regulation on the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. And there we have all the requirements for companies within the scope of the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. We call it CSRD. In early 2025, all listed and large companies will have to adopt and be regulated with this. And later on, in 2026, we will talk about the relevant regulation for the SMEs. CSRD will also be adopted in Greece till the end of this year. So, CSRD and ECRS are introducing us to the double materiality model that comprises the impact materiality and the financial materiality. And we will go through my presentation to understand what that is. So, when you go to a bank, you go through a process that they say, know your client. CSRDs, in a very depth sense, know your risks and try to materialize them. That's CSRD is all about, and double materiality is all about. You have to know your risks, and you have to find a way to materialize them. So, not only to be regulated, risk is a challenge to materialize it, but it's also an opportunity to see where you stand for, and what do you have to do in your organization, and for your community, and for your city. So, CSRD has a framework, and we examine it from the impact perspective, or a financial perspective, or both. So, we examine our IROs, meaning impacts, risks, and opportunities. To help you out, I have all the terminology analyzed as depicted in ESRS 1. ESRS 1 is the most generic part of the ESRSs. So, if you go through this, you can understand the generic aspect. This is the big balloon, the big picture. And later on, give me a second to see my notes. You have to connect 4 dots. The 4 dots is your organization should be, first of all, in compliance with the standards. Let's say in principle, but you have to check on your organization specifics so as to be able to modify. One size does not fit all. There are standards and substandards that can be really adopted to your specifics. So, when you design, you can process these 2 that I have below, the IG1, it's also the link, and the implementation guidance related to ESRS 3. This one is still subject to change. We're waiting till summer to be finalized. These are our 4 dots. Pinpoint your business activities, comprising those in the value of chain 4. Listen, to go through the specifics, below my presentation, I have all the, let's say, references to make your life easier regarding compliance. Then you have to define your IROs, impacts, risks, and opportunities. Then you have to determine which of your IROs can be materialized. Materialized does not mean always money. Materialized is to have metrics. Complete and organize your documentation. So, let's go to dot 1. Line up with the ESRS reporting level, subsidiary level or parent company level. What do you have to do? First of all, collect your organization information. Where from? The website. Are there external materials, corporate presentations, or other stuff? Legal and regulatory environment, especially for companies that are heavily regulated, this is most mandatory. Media reports, publications regarding you and your industry. Peer reports and sector-specific benchmarks, publications on sustainability trends and scientific findings. There is where ASHRAE is most helpful. More and more helpful each day. Useful tips. What do you have to do? Select upstream, downstream, value chain activities. Check your related dependencies, meaning subcontractors, resources, business relationship, your geographical footprint, affected shareholders. Create a register with all your activities so as to be embedded in your materiality assessment. Let's go to our second one. The most important thing in materiality assessment is to engage your stakeholders. All of them. And how can you get this feedback? With the internal and external stakeholders. Conduct conversations, webinars, surveys, interviews, show relevant questionnaires. Establish this as an ongoing, intensive due diligence process, as you are the external auditor that performs a very thorough and extensive due diligence process. Recognize which of all these matters are sustainability matters for your organization. Make a list. I have there the SRS topics that you should find. Consider and add your sector-specific ones and your entity-specific matters. Include issues that may are reported by peers, competitors. I stress competitors here, financial analysts, regulations or sector standards. Therefore, your organization's sustainability issues that are relevant. Consider these questions. Is the issue regulated? We have relevant sectors that are very heavily regulated, such as banks, in the insurance sector as well. Or is disclosure of the issue required by a regulatory body? Maybe it is, maybe it is not. Is disclosure of the issue required by relevant industry, SASB standards or GRI sector standards? Was the issue identified maybe in a previous double materiality assessment? Maybe. Has the issue been identified in any research conducted by ESG analysts, peers, or ASHRAE as well? Is the issue related to your organization's business activities or relationships or value chain dependence on resources? Or is it in the financial, regulatory, geopolitical, or regulatory environments in which you operate? You have to examine all the spectrum of all the possible aspects. Impacts. Well, let us analyze the word impact according to ESRS 1. It's the actual or potential positive or negative impacts on people or the environment. And as an example, if you identify substances of concern, hints, no matter how small they are, as a relevant subtopic, I see the SRS 1, sorry, you should identify each individual substance of concern to get information about this. And regarding financial risks and opportunities, sustainability matter is material from a financial perspective if it triggers or could reasonably be expected to trigger material financial effects on the undertaking, on your organization. So let me get this a bit faster. Okay. I think that this is most helpful. It helped me as well. Impacts that may generate financial risks or opportunities. First of all, you have to consider these 13 factors. Operational changes in your organization, capacity to meet strategic goals, capacity to follow regulations. There are many organizations that struggle to follow regulation. And if you check the Allianz Risk Barometer in 2024, you will see that always, throughout the years, one of the major risks that the CEOs and the organizations face is a regulatory risk, because most of the CEOs and the organizations are struggling to cope with regulation. Reputational effects of its environmental or social impacts, defamation lies everywhere. You have to be cautious. Decreased operating expenses resulting from investments in energy-efficient technologies. That's what ASHRAE is here for. Increased capital expenditures associated with facility upgrades or modifications. New access to capital with more favorable terms and lower interest rates because of your relevant processes that you have implemented for, let's see, the E factor, the environmental issues. Modifications made to assets because of changing weather patterns, such as increased flood risks. You have already, all of the colleagues already mentioned this as well. Accelerated decommissioning of assets because of commitments or loss of financial viability. Incurrence of costs associated with stranded assets and associated redundancies. Increased training costs to a skilled workforce for new products or services, revenue reduction linked to certain products or services, and at last increased insurance premiums or legal liabilities because of non-compliance with regulations, settlements, fines, or legal fees. Well, let's see how can we materialize IROs. The indicators or thresholds in a materiality assessment are the SRS 1 should consist both qualitative and quantitative information. So we are talking about scale, substantial, major, moderate, minimal, scope, high, moderate, low, irremediable character, impossible, challenging, moderately difficult or easy, likelihood, almost certain, likely, possible or unlikely, magnitude above or below the threshold. The organization should maintain all this documentation of management decisions and outcomes for each of IRO as part of your detailed documentation. You have to be very thorough. The organization also should describe how thresholds were determined and when management used judgment in applying these thresholds. And then you are ready to complete and organize your disclosures. You have to map the arrows to the related disclosure requirements and data points within the relevant topic and standard to determine the information to be disclosed. And finally, if any industry and your organization specific arrows or material, specific disclosures you should provide to enable users to understand IROs. Let me give you an example before I finish. Consider a 3PL logistics company. The emissions, the data coming from the routing software, where all the goods are transferred to, and how this affects environment, society, people that are working in the company, and people in every route they are delivering goods. You have to do metrics in all these. And may I suggest to ASHRAE, regarding double materiality, there are very good colleagues in this for double materiality. Do a webinar with 2 or 3 relevant case studies, how to materialize IROs and how to do the double materiality assessment. I think it would be quite interesting, and this is a theoretical perspective in the short time that we have in our presentation, but it's not that difficult. It's what I said before. Know your risks and learn how to materialize them. Not all risks can be materialized. And last, the European Financial Reporting Advisory Group, it's FRAG, and the International Sustainability Standard Board, ISSB, they have published the interoperability guidance between the two of them. So you have to disclose both ways, accounting-wise, risk-wise, meaning financial-wise and regulatory-wise. So it's quite challenging, it's interesting, it's something new, but as I said before, know your risks, nothing more. That's the first step. Thank you very much for your attention.
You already know the slide so you can proceed with evaluation. But are there any questions? Oh, go ahead.
You shall report.
I don't need to monopolize it.
No.
Thank you, that was very interesting. A very quick question. Would you agree that perhaps at early stages, when assessing those risks and the concept of double materiality, accuracy is less of importance, but it's not how accurate the assessment would be, but how impactful the decision made afterwards?
Data accuracy and consistency, no. That's the point. That's the key of a risk assessment. So as to be able to materialize IROs, we need data accuracy and consistency. And that's a challenge.
Any other question? Thank you very much.